I watched the evolution of both these guys. This didn't happen overnight. In 2022, before he owned Twitter, Elon tweeted this chart depicting how he felt about the liberal side having shifted so much that it left a basically liberal centrist like him now labeled a conservative. I related. I related to the kind of mean girl shit you get from the cool kids in Wokeville when you're perceived that way. They tried real hard to cancel Rogan a few years ago. And when Elon hosted Saturday Night Live in 2021, well before he was a Trumper, some of the cast members gave him the cold shoulder for the sin of being rich. If you want to win my vote, don't give me the ick. You know what the ick is, right? It's a term mostly used in the dating world to describe that moment when one of the people, usually the man, does something so icky that the woman cannot forgive it or forget it. Like sending a dick pic or being mean to the waitress, paying for dinner with a coupon, getting his mother to call you when you dump him, asking for sex in baby voice. Once you give her the ick, it's a wrap.
Bill Maher just dropped a bombshell on the Democrats, and this time, he's not holding back. In a no-holds-barred monologue on Real Time, the outspoken comedian went off on the far left, calling out what he sees as a complete disconnect from reality. He even hinted this might be the end of the road for him. Now, that might sound shocking to some in the woke crowd, but if you've been paying attention to Maher over the years, you saw this coming. He's been slowly building to this moment. Before we break it all down, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you're always up to speed when we bring the heat. Let's jump in.
The dilemma for Democrats. Their young people, their key constituency, not only don't like their own civilization, they like the wrong one. They actually think Hamas is a liberation movement. They chant for the Houthis. They're chanting, "We will honor our martyrs" at Yale. They're looking for love in all the wrong countries. Someone needs to tell the kids that America is not the society where women basically have no rights, where there's zero freedom of religion and where dissent is punishable by death. Our democracy may be on life support, but we still have elections.
So, what's got Bill Maher this fired up and ready to walk away? Here's the unfiltered truth. He sees the left spiraling out of control with what he calls a radical woke agenda. Maher's been sounding the alarm for years, warning Democrats they're heading straight for disaster, but those warnings fell on deaf ears. Now, it's not just about pushing extreme ideas. He's calling them out for trying to indoctrinate kids to hate their own country while praising regimes that openly want to see America fall. That's not progressive, that's madness. For Maher, this was the tipping point. He let it all out in classic, unapologetic fashion, and yeah, he absolutely unleashed. And honestly, it was about time.
Coachella this year, when an Irish rap group projected onto screens, Israel, free Palestine, got big applause. Globalize the intifada is the catchphrase that's really catching on these days, as if worldwide suicide bombing and cosplaying Islamic revolutionaries is the answer to our problems. At an AOC Bernie Sanders rally in Idaho last month, someone threw a Palestinian flag over an American flag, and the crowd erupted in approval. What should have happened after that is one of the adults on stage should have told their young loyal followers, this is not a symbol of freedom, this is.
You could practically see the frustration written all over Maher's face as he took aim at party heavyweights like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. What set him off? The disturbing decline of patriotism among young Democrats. And the irony? AOC and Sanders keep proving his point. Instead of standing up for the country, they're fueling outrage, deepening divides, and pandering to the loudest, most extreme voices on the fringe. Maher's voice cracked with intensity as he ripped into Democratic leadership, accusing them of tossing aside long-standing American values just to chase social media clout and short-term applause. This wasn't just a rant, it was a eulogy for a party he once stood by. He torched them for turning their backs on the very ideals that shaped America: unity, strength, and common sense. Rather than inspiring the next generation to cherish and lead the nation, Maher says they're teaching them to hate it. And for him, that betrayal? It's the final straw. That's why he's ready to walk.
Thought leaders in the Democratic Party keep encouraging and not rebuking the idea that America is cringe and the people who run Gaza are great. The Democrats are doomed. Alyssa Slotkin's right. Liberals are weak and woke, especially the white ones, and they indulge all sorts of nonsense from their kids, a pattern that then continues on in the Democratic Party. Last election, it was all the gender stuff, the insistence that men can have babies and such, and now I fear that we like the terrorists is the new that. Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their...
You can feel Maher's anger building with every sentence as he goes off on the very party he once proudly supported. He's accusing them of becoming unbearably woke and totally disconnected from real-life struggles. In his view, the party's flashy new ideals are just recycled fantasies, ideas that sound good in theory but have nothing to do with the everyday concerns of most Americans. Take AOC's so-called economic revolution, for example. Maher calls it what it is, a repackaged version of early 20th century socialism, a system that's repeatedly failed everywhere it's been attempted. Her big promises? Either dangerously naive, completely unrealistic, or just plain hype. But despite how unworkable those ideas are, the Democratic leadership seems determined to push her as the rising star for 2028. Maher isn't buying it. He sees through the image. To him, this isn't meaningful progress, it's political theater pretending to be a revolution. He's stunned at how a party that once stood up for working people is now more focused on going viral and chasing utopian fantasies. And at this point, he's done.
It's too early to strategize. Democrats have been having a lot of donor retreats lately where liberal strategists hold ideathons, where they try to figure out why they keep losing elections. You know, apart from using words like ideathon. And now one idea that's getting a lot of attention is the Dems need to find their Joe Rogan, a liberal Joe Rogan, because that's why Kamala lost. Republicans have a podcast.
Yep, that was one of their big post-election realizations. And honestly, when you think about it, it's not the worst takeaway. Heading into 2024, Democrats had pretty much torched their relationships with neutral media voices and independent creators. Their increasingly rigid policies and constant purity tests drove away anyone who didn't toe the line perfectly. And when those once neutral platforms dared to call them out, the response wasn't open debate, it was cancel culture, public shaming, and online dogpiles. So naturally, those pushed out started looking elsewhere. Some even ended up backing Donald Trump, not necessarily because they loved him, but because they were fed up with the left's arrogance and intolerance. Even Joe Rogan, a longtime centrist in the podcast space, told his massive audience to vote Republican. That shift didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was a direct result of a party that shut down criticism instead of listening to it. Now, they're scrambling to win back the same people they pushed out the door.
I don't think his mind is completely inflexible. His neck, yes. But not his mind. And he's expressed unease with some things Trump is doing, as has a certain disgruntled former employee named Elon Musk, who, like Joe, is another guy who 5 years ago was thought of as a liberal, but got driven into the other camp by bad attitudes and bad ideas, a reversal I completely understand, although I would never emulate. I also see the woke mind virus. I just don't jump from frying pans into fires.
Right now, more and more people are finding themselves drawn toward the MAGA movement. And whether he openly admits it or not, Bill Maher seems to be moving in that direction, too. Sure, he recently said in an interview that he's not switching sides. But let's be real, that's exactly what Elon Musk said at first. Same with Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and even Joe Rogan. All of them denied any shift, until the Democratic Party's growing extremism pushed them over the edge. Maher may not be rocking a red cap just yet, but his critiques, frustrations, and increasingly right-leaning views suggest he's not far off. He's had it with the virtue signaling. He's over the censorship. And he's completely disillusioned with how far the party has strayed from basic logic and common sense. At a certain point, when your core values no longer match your party's direction, it's hard to ignore the signs. Maher might say he's staying loyal, but everything he's saying points to the opposite.
Watch the evolution of both these guys. This didn't happen overnight. In 2022, before he owned Twitter, Elon tweeted, this chart depicting how he felt about the liberal side having shifted so much that it left a basically liberal centrist like him now labeled a conservative. I related. I related to the kind of mean girl you get from the cool kids in Wokeville when you're perceived that way. They tried real hard to cancel Rogan a few years ago, and when Elon hosted Saturday Night Live in 2021, well before he was a Trumper, some of the cast members gave him the cold shoulder for the sin of being.
The Democratic Party has become a walking contradiction, loud, proud, and completely out of touch. They rail against the wealthy while rubbing shoulders with billionaire donors and parading oligarchs through their inner circle. They preach racial equality, but somehow manage to sideline voices like Rashida Tlaib during the final rally before a brutal election loss. They claim to stand for the working class, yet prop up candidates who've never held a blue-collar job or even tried to understand what it's like living paycheck to paycheck. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The so-called party of intellect gave us a candidate who can barely get through a sentence without a teleprompter. It's hypocrisy on top of delusion, all wrapped in smug self-righteousness. So really, can you blame Bill Maher for wanting out? When a party becomes so detached from reality, starts mocking the very people it claims to represent, and trades real solutions for empty gestures, even its most loyal voices start heading for the exits. And Maher? He's already halfway there.
Win my vote, don't give me the ick. You know what the ick is, right? It's a term mostly used in the dating world to describe that moment when one of the people, usually the man, does something so icky that the woman cannot forgive it or forget it. Like sending a dick pic, or being mean to the waitress, paying for dinner with a coupon, getting his mother to call you when you dump him, asking for sex in baby voice. Once you give her the ick, it's her.
So really, what more proof do you need that Maher's already packing his bags? He's practically pleading with the Democrats, don't push me away if you still want my vote. And that's not a punchline, it's a warning. One he's delivered again and again. But this time, it's different. You can hear it in his voice, the weariness, the edge, the total lack of patience. The sarcasm cuts deeper, the criticism feels more personal, and the frustration, it's turned into full-blown exhaustion. Maher's not just annoyed, he's worn out. Tired of playing middleman in a party that refuses to listen. Tired of pretending the far left hasn't completely taken over the agenda. And let's be honest, he's not really asking the Democrats to change anymore. He's just explaining why he's done waiting.
Weeks ago, Bobby Kennedy, scion of the most storied dynasty in Democratic Party history, dropped out of the presidential race and threw his support not to the Democrat, but to Trump. And everyone all at once said the same thing. Bobby Kennedy did something weird?
With everything Maher's laying out, loud, clear, and relentless, it's getting harder to deny, the man is on his way out. This isn't speculation anymore. It's a slow-motion exit playing out in real time. Now let's be real, while it might look like the left is shifting toward the center, don't be fooled. That illusion could disappear overnight if the party decides to throw its weight behind figures like Bernie Sanders, AOC, or Gavin Newsom in 2028. These champions of woke politics could drag the Democrats straight back into the ideological abyss, back into cancel culture, socialist pipe dreams, and anti-American rhetoric. And if they fall into that trap again, they won't just lose people like Bill Maher, they'll lose moderates, independents, and the swing states they have to win. Choosing candidates like that isn't progress, it's political suicide. They might as well hand the GOP the keys to the White House. No recounts necessary. Maher's frustration isn't just personal, it's symbolic of a much larger shift. Longtime liberals like him are waking up to a party that's abandoned reality, tossed aside its foundational values, and replaced real leadership with empty slogans. He may not be waving a MAGA flag, but his message is no longer a defense of the left, it's a warning shot. And if the Democrats keep pushing radicals like AOC, Bernie, or Newsom, they're not just risking Maher's support, they're setting themselves up for failure. America's not asking for perfection. It's asking for sanity. And unless the left figures that out soon, Maher won't be the last one to walk away. The clock's ticking.